Aeon Flux was released in 2005 and is directed by someone you've never heard of, written by someone you've never heard of, and based upon an animated series that you've probably never heard of, created by Peter Chung. The basic plot is that in 2011, 99% of the world's population became infected, and those who survived are now in self-contained cities surrounded by a huge wall. Now, although these citizens live in peace for the most part, people do tend to disappear, people have nightmares, and also the government encourages these people to sort of forget about the people who have gone, which obviously is a bit shaky. Now, this kind of leadership always has a resistance, and Aeon Flux, played by Charlize Theron, is the best of the best. She's almost like a super spy for this resistance. The city is ruled over by Goodchild, and Charlize Theron, Aeon Flux, is given the mission to take Goodchild out. The first thing that struck me about this film was the colour palette. It's quite a varied colour palette. It's not a dull-looking movie. And some of the fashions, the quirky sort of clothing, would feel right at home in The Fifth Element, for example. Now, at the beginning of the film, we get a brief montage with some expository narration by Charlize Theron. But I still feel like I didn't quite understand the rules of the film. And although it becomes clearer as the film goes on, I was still scratching my head at some scenes. One of the opening scenes is Aeon walking through this botanical gardens or park type thing, bumping into a complete stranger, locking lips with this person. He transfers like a pill capsule into her, and then they walk off. This immediately sparks something in Aeon Flux's brain, and she's in like a courthouse type thing. It's like a vision, which I don't quite understand how that works. What happens to her physically if she's in this place? Whatever. And holy shit, is that Frances McDormand? What the fuck is she doing in this film? This scene bugged me because what Aeon is wearing is surely trying to conceal her identity. So why do something as conspicuous as locking lips with a complete stranger and then walking off without even as much as an ass tap is beyond me. Trevor Goodchild, who is painted as the bad guy, has some interesting motivations, and the plot in general does get better as the film progresses. There's one scene in particular where Aeon confronts Trevor, only for him to call her Catherine, which is again an intriguing plot point, and it does progress. We later find out that Aeon is a clone of Trevor's late wife. It's later revealed that there's no cure for this infection, or for the infertility, and that everyone is pretty much recycled. What they're doing is they are killing people, essentially, taking their DNA, impregnating people with that DNA, and just recycling people. Which is, that's kind of interesting, really. This whole city has been thriving for 400 plus years, and they're all recycled. And it also makes a point of showing you a small montage of Trevor and his brother Oren, played by Johnny Lee Miller, who clone themselves and teach younger versions of themselves everything they need to know to continue their research to prevent this infertility and this infection that's going around, which I found that really quite interesting. I really enjoyed that aspect. Now, as these movies go, Oren, again played by Johnny Lee Miller, double crosses Trevor and has actually been killing people who have successfully become pregnant, both naturally and through their research, including Aeon's sister Una. Trevor is then killed, and Aeon blows up this huge DNA data bank that's kind of like a blimp, and that crashes into the wall, revealing beautiful green world that they are surrounded by, not this desolate wasteland that they've been led to believe. From my brief summary, you can tell the plot really, it kind of isn't the problem. The plot is actually quite interesting, and it does get, as I said, more interesting as the film goes on. I think the last 30 minutes of this film are actually pretty enjoyable. But the execution of this plot is so monotone. In fact, the only character who I found moderately interesting was Zethandra, and that's only because she has hand feet.
Ah! Hand feet!
No, hand feet. The action scenes are equally lazy, and the editing is so choppy you can hardly see what's going on. The film is littered with these huge, grand open spaces with nothing much occupying them, and this gives the film a really detached feeling, and whatever the filmmaker's intentions were, it just doesn't work. On the other hand, the interior sets are actually quite impressive, especially Trevor Goodchild's library. I thought that was a pretty interesting set. The cinematography is very average, and nothing particularly impresses in this regard. The sound design and music, on the other hand, works quite well. It never overshadows what's playing on screen, but it also never impresses in terms of creating a hero theme tune or anything like that. The visual effects are adequate enough, but I feel like if they'd used it more sparingly, they could have achieved more in the long run. In short, this isn't a terrible movie, but it's incredibly boring in its presentation and its performances. There's definitely a reason why no one talks about this movie anymore. It's for all the reasons that I've listed above. I'm going to give this movie a 5 out of 10. If you like this video, please click subscribe, comment down below, hit like if you're feeling fancy, and keep it here on Hench and Saunters for more retro reviews.